6 years ago, my entire homestead was just raw land. I really didn't know if it was going to work out. And so I had to make a few decisions early on that would more likely guarantee my success. The first thing I did right is I didn't look for land. I looked for a county that would allow me to do what I wanted to do on my land. Most people skip that part and try to figure it out later. I searched the entire United States, then narrowed it down to a few counties that might work, and then I looked for land inside those counties. And that order mattered. I didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't even visit the land before I bought it. So in my case, I had to make sure that it would work before I got here. And that meant calling the county and every department in the county and asking them any obvious questions that could cause issues or holdups for me. And once I realized it would probably pan out okay, I bought the land. The first night out here, it just felt like camping. And I set up my camper van, which you can see there now. And it wasn't easy, and it took a lot of time, but things began to get easier. With the land, I started to solve things in order. I started in the camper van, which pretty well met my needs out the gate because I had, most of my needs collected inside of the camper van. And then I started a shop, mostly so I could start to harvest rainwater. But the shop is also, a good piece of shelter for tools, and eventually I built my little business out of there. And I built shelter for the horses and the livestock and animals, and eventually I got to my cabin. So water started out pretty easy, just some IBC totes and a surface to harvest the rainwater. And as I added other shelter, there's other surfaces. I also built ponds around the homestead and swells and whatnot that run around the property. You see those swells, they lead all the way to this pond at this end of my property. Water tower back there allows me to pump water around the homestead to livestock and gardens. And I have a filter inside the cabin. So I add bleach to the cisterns where I hold drinking water, and then I filter it through a filtration system which removes the bleach, and it makes it perfectly safe drinking water. So these are the waterers over here by the livestock. They're just gravity fed. Even the horses have their own gravity fed waterer in the middle. I think I'm gonna upgrade to a larger one, but I can fill that once a day, and that's about enough for the horses, but it's gravity fed anyway. There's a closer look at the stables and the round pen for the horses. Nothing fancy. I started with chickens for livestock to get eggs. I started gardening some. I built an even larger greenhouse there underground. And quickly I learned the fastest way to get a large amount of caloric intake is to have meat. And so I started raising these pigs. Anywhere there's a shop or a shed, I've dug large underground water cisterns. You can see more about those on my website. The solar system that I started with on the camper van was just a simple RV solar system, and that was 400 watts of solar panels and the tools I needed to set it up, like the way to run the wires out of the van to the roof. There's no solar panels up there now, but there used to be, and there's still a connection. And I had a 200 amp hour battery inside. Eventually I upgraded to 800 amp hours, and that was quite the system. I was even able to run air conditioning. And then eventually I put a much larger system on the cabin and one in the shop. And I never have to run a generator. I pretty well never have. One time I ran a generator to cut some wire, and I've never ran it since. And so I guess the point is as long as you're not being frivolous with your needs for power, it doesn't take a huge system to get started. I think you should start small. And then the promising thing is power really is a lot more affordable now and a lot more quality. When I came out here, I didn't have much money at all. I didn't have a source of income, but I had a little savings, and most of that went to building my shop. But, you know, I just started with some social media presence, started documenting the process, and slowly and surely I started to build the business up and create a little bit of income. But the truth is, I was out here 6 years, so just recently I just barely started to revisit my brand and how I'm creating income on my homestead. But 100% of my income has always come from the homestead. I've never worked a job or worked for anyone else or anything like that. And it's probably easier nowadays to do that than ever before. Needless to say, this homestead didn't just appear. It wasn't here when I got here. It was dirt, just like at the beginning of the video. And with time, slowly over time, I was able to build out something that met my needs. Rainwater harvesting and homesteading in general is a long game. You know, having plants like this just growing, that didn't just happen. It took a long time to develop my land so that it would hold water in certain areas. And I've never watered these plants, but there's goji berries, there's alfalfa, there's arugula, and all kinds of stuff coming up around the pond because I've designed the area to hold water. And to be honest, the biggest change out here was not the homestead, it was me. I ate better, I lost weight, I had more time to think and to read, and I stopped reacting and I began to build. If you want all the details as to how I think, it's on my website, but this is what it looks like. It's not about having everything. It really just boiled down to building it all in the right order. You don't need to rush it.